Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We do have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? If there aren't, we will operate under that agenda. Brings us to agenda item number 2, which is consider the approval of the minutes of 2 work sessions and 1 regular meeting that was held, all were held on August 27th. So the council does have the minutes of those 3 meetings. Are there any corrections?
Move approval?
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 3. This is consider the award of bids for project Z70-2. This is the South High Street, South Whitney Street alley improvement project. We have a resolution to consider that would accept the low bid. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We did receive 2 bids for the project, and we also had a informational meeting for the property owners involved with the alley project last night at City Hall. After that meeting, we decided that we would be going forward with the project and recommend approval to Town & Country Excavating.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So move?
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. Motion passes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to thank the residents that were involved in that project for their participation, cooperation. I think that was a really good involvement. I think it's a good project. So, and I want to thank Glenn and the engineering department for all the work they put in on it too. Appreciate it.
Well, do you want to say anything about timing of this project then? Very good comments, by the way.
Timing should be probably started within the next 2 weeks. He's got to get the award, guys got to get his paperwork in, got to order the manholes. So I would expect somewhere 2.5 weeks they'll be started. And with reasonable weather, there's no reason it shouldn't be complete for the main part in a week. So
Good.
we're looking for it to be done, installed yet this fall.
Very good. We'll move then to agenda item number 4. This is consider the award of quotations for the demolition of building structures in Block 11. At address 100, 102, 110 West Main Street. Once again, Glenn Olson, City Engineer, Director of Public Works.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. We received 1 proposal, and we're recommending the award to Landwehr Construction of St. Cloud for $106,300.
This is the same as what the bid was.
That's correct.
Questions?
We had no other interest, Glenn, whatsoever?
No,
from
we
local?
had 3 plan holders and only 1 submission.
Questions?
Move approval?
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? I think the one discussion was the reason this was put out for proposals after the bid was kind of verification of
The addendum.
the low bid because there was only 1 bid,
Right.
and now we received that verification.
Yep.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. Motion passes. Move then to agenda item number 6, which would be the ratification of the purchase of vehicles.
5.
Oh, agenda item number 5. Thank you, Craig. Agenda item number 5, consider the award of bids for the motor grader for the street department. Glenn, do you want to start with this?
Yes, I will. We did do bids for this. We received several bids and several different types of bids. Dean Kudrin is here, superintendent for the street department to come up and answer any questions that you might have. We did do a pretty thorough review. We are recommending the bid of the John Deere that is not the low bid. It includes the bid that has joystick controls rather than, we call them an antler rack that moves back and forth. It's got the controls up ahead. So Dean, if you want to come up and answer any questions of the vehicle itself. If you remember this process, this started about 3 or 4 years ago, and then we didn't have enough funding for it on a one-year basis, so we put money away for it, and then we put money away the next year, and now we went forward with the bids based upon having adequate funds in the equipment fund to purchase it. The existing one is at 84 Caterpillar with 13,000 hours on it. So that's what we're replacing.
So Dean, first thing you might want to clarify, the low bid didn't meet specifications.
Right, this particular model is the only one that did meet all the specifications that we had. I think we had 4 or 5 maybe total. We had 2 used ones. I don't know, you probably see them in your packet. So of all of them, this is the only one. And as of today, one did take their bid back. Caterpillar took their bid back because they couldn't put snow equipment on this particular one they bid.
Questions for Dean or Glenn?
I just want to comment, Councilman Lozinski and I pretty much wore these guys out on these grader bids. So
It's okay.
It's been, at least in our minds, the two of us, we've vetted it pretty good. And we talked a lot about the difference, $60,000 is a lot of money. And so Jim and I had a lot of back and forth, and Administrator Hanson brought the group together, and we did a phone conference also, and Dean and Glenn answered a number of questions for us on that. And the biggest thing that I was looking at is, I understand the antler rack. I've never operated one with a joystick, but I know the risks in running an antler rack when you're running multiple controls at the same time. You don't have your hands on the steering wheel. You're usually bracing it, so you're not driving, you're kind of holding the wheel. And it's really a safety issue. And when I talked to Dean about the difference in operating a joystick, he sold me over. This is a huge difference. And, I plan on the city owning this blade for potentially 30 years unless RDO's got a really good buyback program. So I just think in looking in the future and how things operate, we're crazy to not buy the technology.
That's true, and that's my main reason for going. I understand the difference, between the two, and it's a chunk of money. But I look at the safety aspect, not only that, the comfort of operating. Everything with the joystick control is moving with you versus the antler rack is out in front of you. So, and fatigue, everybody does snow removal, they know 8 hours a long day, but we go 14 hours sometimes. So that's the main reason why I'm pushing for the joystick controls.
And like Craig said, we went back and forth, and we looked at, because I looked at that used Titan we visited, but that has maintenance issues. I don't know how to phrase that. It breaks teeth, plain and simple. It could cost us more in the long run because of repairs that
Right.
they haven't seemed to fix the problem of it yet. And I think Craig explained to me, like the new John Deere has the ability to flip that blade a lot better than the case,
Right.
which will save us curbs, save,
Manhole covers, valve heads.
and as somebody who runs equipment such as this, I will say I changed one of my forklifts out earlier this year to one with a joystick. Comes down to safety issues too. In my case, it was slapping a guy off rafters or running a joystick. That equipment sets it right. You can run it with one hand and you can pay attention. And with these new ones, we could actually probably get to the curbs closer with a joystick because you can feather that blade over.
When you get used to them.
Yeah,
Yep.
you
It
will
takes a
feather that
little,
blade over, and in the long run, it probably is going to save us money over the course of 20 years.
Yep. So,
Does have the option of flipping it to steering.
this particular model has a steering wheel also. It's just a matter of flipping a switch and you can use a steering wheel and go back to joysticks. But the steering wheel has is the master of it all. So you cannot disengage a steering wheel. So,
Any other questions?
Right, just a couple questions, Dean. The joystick, how does your staff feel about that?
You know, when I had two guys prior to retirement, they were steering wheel guys. But now with the younger generation, they're all joystick control.
Okay?
So it
So
is.
they feel comfortable
Yep.
with it, or they're going to feel comfortable
Yep,
with it?
even the one we rented last year was all joystick, and it took the guy, he said, maybe 4 hours, he said, it's all it took me. He said, you just take your time, get used to it, and once you're used to it, it's just natural.
Second question, what kind of a warranty or,
It's got a full 1-year warranty on it, I believe, and you can buy extended warranties on it, you know, whatever, up to, I don't know, quite a few years.
Is
And
that-
there's a couple different options. You can buy a full warranty, you can buy the hydraulic package warranty. There's a couple different options for that.
did we buy any of those warranties, or is it just
We
just
have
taking
not
the
yet.
standard option?
I've just taken the standard right now.
That's parts and labor for 1 year?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Not, thank you, Dean. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
You have the recommendation. I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the recommendation of the John Deere, the purchase from RDO.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 6, which is the ratification of the purchase of vehicles for the Community Planning Department. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor.
Jason Anderson, Assistant City Engineer.
Thank you. The city opened bids on September 4th for the replacement of 2 vehicles in the Community Planning Department. We bid, one bid package was for a pickup and the other for an SUV. After reviewing the bids, staff's recommending to award the pickup bid for a 2019 Dodge Ram Quad Cab to Lockwood Motors of Marshall in the amount of $23,476, which includes tax and trade-in of the pickup we're replacing, which is a 2003 Chevy four-wheel drive regular extended cab pickup. The other bid was for the SUVs, and we are recommending to reject all SUV bids and award another pickup to Lockwood Motors for the bid price of a new pickup without trade-in. The purpose of that recommendation is the SUV bids were within $100 of the pickup bids, and we thought that owning a pickup for the department would be a much more advantageous and better use of funds for the cost. So with that being said, on Friday, Lockwood Motors let us know that they were running into issues with ordering the vehicles. So they went ahead, Administrator Hanson authorized us to go ahead and have them put in the order with, I believe they can still cancel it, but we put in the order now to order the 2 pickups to make sure that we could get them at the bid price that they recommended. So that's our recommendation for 2 pickups, and I'd entertain any questions from the council.
Thank you, Jason. Questions?
Jason, I'm not a pickup knowledgeable. Quad cab, 4 doors?
4 doors, not as big as a crew cab, just a smaller space in the back area.
Is a quad cab really necessary?
We find it extremely useful to hold small tools and items and plan sheets and just kind of have a place to put them in the back. Occasionally, we'll run more people in the pickups. It's also handy for that. But the under-seat storage in the back and just having the area for some tool storage is really, really helpful.
With that being said, then why, because we're putting tonneau covers on these, so I'm kind of going with you, Russ. Do we really need the quad cabs if you're throwing tonneau covers on? Because
With the
the
intent-
most I've ever seen in a building department vehicle is 2 people. Really,
Sure. The intent of the tonneau cover is for, if we have a ladder or something in back, to have that covered. That's a $525 option installed. That's an option that we could always remove if council wanted us to. The building department also specifically has computers and gear up front that makes the front seat sort of tough to sit in too. But I understand where you're coming from. We just think that it is extremely useful for the increase in cost of a couple $1,000s for extended cab over regular cab to have that back seat. And then if we get to replacing vehicles, that also helps out on the back end for sale naturally, so.
Greg?
We kind of went through similar when we were specking out vehicles for my work with the state and the team that I work with. It's a similar function to what the building inspection department does. And we also went with quad cab, just the short seat fleet quad cabs, simply because some of the gear that we have needs to be secured. It doesn't necessarily need to be temperature weather treated, but it needs to be locked up, and we don't carry it back and forth. And, you know, a tonneau cover is only as good as the people that walk by it that don't want to take a razor knife and get in it. So, you know, we did it because there's certain valuable things that we keep in the truck, leave them in there, and that way we can lock it up and secure it.
Concur with that as well. I would add that we did go through the equipment review process, and the specs were as approved by committee.
Have we ever looked at the cost of a low mileage, 1 year, 2 year used vehicle as opposed to brand new?
In this
What the cost
instance, we did not, and I've made this statement before, and maybe now is as good a time as any to make it again. From my opinion, I think that it's wise for the city to purchase new vehicles because, for a couple reasons. One, it creates a level playing field for all the dealers in town to bid like equipment and have a fair shot at it. That way you don't hear something from someone that we knew somebody had something on the lot and we wrote it around that. And I think you run into some very sketchy territory by doing that. The other is preferential government pricing. We get very good prices, as you can see by this bid right here, on buying new equipment. You throw that out the window when you go to buy it off the lot. So I think that it's very wise for the city to buy new fleet vehicles at governmental pricing, and it's the right thing to do, in our opinion.
Steve, with the way we spec these vehicles, they're kind of a fleet vehicle, you don't really find them a year old. You usually find 5 years old, 150,000 miles on them. Because I myself been looking for a fleet vehicle like this. I couldn't find one used. I mean, and if they come, they're gone, just like that.
Okay, other questions for Jason?
Just a couple of things. Again, the idea is that because we're getting a 2019, we're saving $4,000 to $5,000 per vehicle, or?
That's what we were told by the dealer. You know, once we took some time early this week to sort of review that, we think that number's a little long. But they were telling us that. I think it's probably more along the lines of 2 to 3%.
But there is some substantial savings by
There
going.
is some savings by purchasing the 19 over rebidding and trying to get a 20.
And the person who's going to be using the vehicle that was going to be the SUV, they have a ladder, and they use the ladder for inspection purposes. So having a pickup truck would be more convenient than having an SUV with regard to the ladder. Then
We'd like to have the flexibility to include a ladder in our vehicle to go to specific job sites. That's correct.
Jim, help me think this through, because I know that if we use an SUV and we're having them carry equipment, we technically have to have a cage in it then. We have to have a cargo cage in it too then for the front seat occupant versus a pickup we don't.
If they have something such as a ladder back of the SUV, but if you carry one of those telescoping ladders, you can strap that in the back of that SUV.
Okay, yeah.
Because I look at the long, as we talk, you know, I'm fine with the pickup, but I don't like ditching that into the SUV yet, because the long-term cost, the SUV is going to be a lot cheaper to keep over 10 years. There's a long-term cost on getting a pickup that costs a lot more to run.
The gas
So-
mileage on our 2018 Dodge Ram Quad Cab, same pickup, same spec, that the surface water truck that I happen to drive is getting, it's about 16 miles per gallon in town as I drive it. So they've come a long way. These are V6 pickups, not V8. The old 2007 that I was driving was 9. So there's quite the difference there.
Yeah, I do agree with that, but there's costs of maintenance, you know, SUV, this probably has 4 quarts oil instead of 6 quarts oil. I mean, there's a cost savings of having the smaller.
True.
I do know on this bid, the Buick Encore did not meet the specs at all. I mean, sure, that number looks great, but that isn't even close to what the specs are that we approved.
Too small.
That was kind of, I don't know why they threw that one in there. to tell you
Good
the
point. Yep.
Okay, any other questions?
I move approval.
Motion by Craig, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by John, discussion?
What I would like to see is I'm going to oppose this simply, is I'd like to approve the pickup that we spec'd, but throw out the second one and have it rebid, you know, so it's, I don't even call it respec it, but whatever, so there's an opportunity for the other dealerships to bid what we want, not have
So you're
respect the car.
you're talking to the SUV, to rebid the SUV.
Approve the one, rebid the SUV. simply because that is what we spec, and, you know, to me, it was goofed up. You said you got 145 minutes late, which I agree that one shouldn't be presented.
So I can speak to that, Lockwood did bid a Chevy Equinox on the small SUV, which was slightly more than the Jeep Cherokee, which was the low SUV. It was a few $100s more. I think if that other dealer would have bid a vehicle that would be a comparable, it'd probably be a GMC Terrain, which should come in close to the Equinox price, if not more.
Or Ford,
Just from
or
our
Ford
knowledge of
Escape.
vehicles. Or a Ford Escape.
Ford Escape also
That's true
needs
too,
that.
which, it's our opinion that you wouldn't see the bids low enough to make a different decision. That's why we're coming with the recommendation.
And I think we should give the dealerships that opportunity to prove them.
Other discussion on the motion?
We do that, and chances of going, I mean, we can't go back then because we're going to lose that
Right, we lose the
couple
9.
thousand or whatever it may
For
be,
sake,
actually.
that pickup is ordered, so that's where we visit with Lockwood. That pickup is in the system already. So is that order still be canceled in 2 weeks,
We
or
would,
can we keep that order?
that's correct, Jim. We would have to check with Lockwood to verify that we could even
That
stop
pickup
the
is
order
still
on the
in
second pickup.
system. And until they have a VIN number, I think that order can be stopped. They probably would sell to somebody else either, so. That vehicle's still floating out there too, so we have that option.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. The motion is as recommended.
For the two pickups.
Close the voting. And that motion passes. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
We'll move then to the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the screen that are on the consent agenda, and they include, consider the adoption of the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed for ice and snow removal, consider the adoption of the resolution for a hearing on a proposed assessment, the introduction of the ordinance amendment to section 86 to 96 to permit a gun range as a conditional use and call for a public hearing, consider the approval of a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for Action Mobility Foundation, the wastewater treatment facilities improvement project, consider the application for payment number 2 from Magni Construction Incorporated, consider the introduction of the cable TV franchise ordinance between the City of Marshall and Spectrum Mid-America LLC, doing business as Charter Communications, and finally consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants to remove for purposes of separate discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. Discussion
No, it's actually by Jim.
by
It's easy
Jim.
to confuse us.
It is, we sound
Okay.
a lot alike.
Thank you for correcting me. Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig, by Jim.
Somebody.
It's somebody in Ward 3.
Was there any other discussion on that motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And that motion passes. So we'll move then to agenda item number 14. This is an informational item. This is an informational item regarding curbside residential recycling collection in the city of Marshall. I think all the council is aware that certainly this is a county issue, but it impacts residents of the city of Marshall. And I think all of us, I don't think I'm incorrect in saying that all of us have received input from our constituents in that there's this issue that citizens are deeply concerned about because they have enjoyed curbside recycling every week for the past number of years, and I think would like to see that continue. Now, there's some unknowns that we have. One is unknown on whether or not the county board will move forward with their direction of having collection sites in different locations that people would take their recyclables to, or whether they would extend the current contract until they determine a path forward that would allow for the curbside collection of recycling. So with that unknown, it's a little bit difficult for the council to take action on either moving forward with our action ourselves or with the requests that the city of Marshall would receive our pro rata share of what our residents are paying for the recycling fee to subsidize recycling, which is $30 per property, plus our share of the SCORE funds to help the city pay for curbside recycling if we were to engage in the contract. But certainly, if the county was going to do it like they always have, there's no need for us to do it.
Right.
So that's a general introduction of the matter. And this was put on the agenda because it's a matter of public discussion, and it's only for information items here. And there could be some direction, perhaps some direction to the city administrator to provide some communication to the county for their consideration at their next meeting, which is next Tuesday. Or there could be a recommendation to not do that. Sharon, do you want to add anything to that?
I do want to add that I've spoken to several other communities in Lyon County. I know of 2 other communities that are looking at providing a letter to the county board expressing support for curbside pickup for recycling. And that could be a consideration for the city council to formally express what they would like to see the county board do in terms of residential recycling in the city of Marshall. I have not yet seen the actual letter that they would send, although they said that they would share that. And then secondly, I did talk with the administrator and the environmental director, I think prior to their county board meeting, about having a drop-off location in the city of Marshall, and would the city of Marshall provide a site for that. And so that would be good to get some feedback from that on that particular request. Although I think if the city were to do that, I think we would need to provide a site that could handle the truck traffic, and then I think the county would need to ensure that someone's there daily to clean up those sites. Because my experience with these particular sites is they need daily monitoring. So that is something to consider. I know one community in Lyon County has stated they currently have a drop-off location for Lyon County, and they are considering not having one if it's not going to be curbside pickup. They see concerns about the site being overrun, not only with traffic, but with recyclable materials and non-recyclable materials. So they're concerned about that. I will add that in the packet, there was a letter that was provided to us from Southwest Sanitation that said that they would, in essence, rescind their letter, which ended the contract early, and that will be possibly considered at the Lyon County Board Commissioner meeting at their next meeting. One of the things I think about with that is it would allow time to sort through kind of the issues here, because if they don't accept the letter, it's a short timeline, and essentially it's September 27th or really at the end of the month. And I don't see how Lyon County can really mobilize that fast. And I also kind of think, just on an opinion status here, I think legally and also procedurally, when a governing board makes a decision, if they can undo it. It's to me, there hasn't been that much motion by Lyon County where that could not happen, where they could undo it. And essentially this letter provides for that. So, I'm kind of looking at, do we respond to the city site? Do we provide a formal letter so that they consider it at their Lyon County Board Commissioner meeting? That's maybe my 2 questions for the council.
Mr. Mayor.
We'll open up for any general discussion. Greg?
And thank you, Bob and Sharon, both for that narrative up. And I've spent a good bit of time both with Sharon and with some constituents and also with other folks regarding this. And I think that as a city and as a council, we need to make a strong stand and a commitment that irregardless which direction the county takes, that we are firmly behind curbside collection, curbside recycling. I think that Lyon County and the service that's been provided has demonstrated a real commitment to doing waste reduction and waste management. And I know it's a tough business, and I think right now with current global politics and the other things that are happening, I've got to believe that it's a pretty tough business to operate, but I also know that that's a changing climate, and hopefully it's a short-term problem. So I don't know what steps we need to take to prepare ourselves in case it does not go the way that we hope that it would and stay with the county, that we are able to at least maintain that service and not change the habits of our residents on how they manage their solid waste, and that we're able to provide that service. And I think that if we can do that in support of the county, that would obviously be my wish. As far as additional drop-off sites in the city, I do not support that. I absolutely do not support that. I think that's a bad idea. I can't think of a neighborhood that would want it. The one site is out on the fairgrounds now, and I know they work hard, and I know that Southwest Sanitation works hard to maintain those sites, but I also see some of the things that get left out there, and it's ridiculous. And I can't think of a neighborhood that I would want that. I know that we've worked hard to deal with other problems that we have on training people how to manage their solid waste and dealing with it just at the residents themselves. I don't want to create a collection point that just brings that into somebody's neighborhood, on steroids. So I think we need to figure out where we're at. If we have to project some room in the potential levy to do that, I think we need to talk about that, and I think we need to be prepared to do that. And again, I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse, but, depending on how that meeting goes next week with the county commissioners, I think we need to be prepared to make some decisions here also.
And on top of that, Craig, Sharon, you asked for direction, and I brought this up 2 weeks ago. I think we need to send a letter to the county, strongly encouraging them to take a look at Southwest Sanitation. They're rescinding their offer to sit down with Dan and Scott as they're sitting here listening to us. You're willing to listen, to keep this going. Let the county handle this, but send a strongly worded letter that we support them and we support their endeavor to have curbside recycling and continue. Because, like you said, Craig, I have not yet had one constituent come up and say, well, I think we should get rid of it. Everyone has come up and said, we need to keep it. I've had people beg me, you do whatever you can, we need to keep these curbside recycling. So I would encourage a letter from the city marshal. I'd be willing to back that.
John, you had
I would be in agreement with Jim on that. I think at minimum, we want to supply or provide a letter that we strongly encourage them to reconsider their decision. I think the same. I have not heard anyone to the contrary of we need to do something to keep curbside. I would hope that before they continue on the path that they have, that they would consider the cost of what it's going to be as far as the additional hauling to the landfill, the additional fill that's been going in. I think it's a pretty good guess that we would not get the type of recycling that we're getting now if everyone has to take it out to a site. And I'm fine actually with the one at just at the fairgrounds. I would agree. I don't see us putting in sites elsewhere in the city. I think the fairgrounds to me would be considered enough in the city to have access, but I do think we want to really continue with the curbside and express that to the county commissioners that this is something that we're really behind. And we need to do that because I think the costs to not do it are much greater than what they've been talking about.
and Russ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would concur with my fellow council members' comments. I mean, I think we've all heard, and it's kind of unusual, especially for me, only being in this position for a short period of time, to have a number of constituents call me and say, I'm willing to pay more. You know, how much more will it cost? You know, and you know, I've heard numbers of $30 more a year, $40 more a year, $100 more a year. I don't know what that number is, but for a constituent to call up and say, we'd be taking a step, the county would be taking a step backwards of 30 years worth of education and recycling and progress, I think, in taking a step back. So again, I would concur with my fellow council members and writing a strongly worded letter to the commissioners and hoping that they would reconsider their decision that they made and continue with the curbside recycling.
I support curbside recycling also, along with the other council members. Before you make important decisions, you need to get all the facts. You need to know what the options are and what the costs are. And I'd like more information exactly how much does it cost to do the recycling for the city of Marshall, because that's what affects us. And have we looked at all the various options? Have we looked at maybe picking up recycling every 2 weeks instead of every week, or different containers or whatever? But I do support curbside recycling. I think it's the best way to go. I think it's going to be more effective that way. But I also want us to make sure we get all the facts and figures before we make decisions, and that we look at all the options before we make decisions.
I agree with everybody. I mean, this is a no-brainer. It's when we take away the recycling pickup and the curbside, get rid of that, we go 30 years back. So I think everybody who's talked to me is like, what are they doing? So it's a no-brainer. To Mr. Mayor, for his suggestions, I think we should look at that. I guess that shows to talk to the county first and see what they can do.
I'd be willing to work with Sharon on a letter that would obviously be shared with the council before it goes out. Time is a little bit short because it probably needs to be done by the end of the week. What I'm hearing from the council, the focus of the letter would be, number one, we want continuation of curbside recycling pickup. Number two, we would like the county to continue to manage that process, and utilizing the whatever contracting mechanism that they want to do, as well as the solid waste tax that supports recycling, as well as the SCORE funds. And if that is not an alternative, that the city will need to look at some alternatives, but that certainly isn't our first choice.
Right. I think it's,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's important as a council to consider that if the county doesn't, I mean, this is a pretty short time, so it would have to, at least on an interim, move pretty quickly. I think the information that Councilman Baracola is talking about is really pretty there. I mean, the county's done it a long time. The hauler has done it a long time. I think there's good information out there. The markets are probably the most variable on what's the end piece for, profit and loss for the provider. But I agree, but I think we need to also know that we might have to make some interim decisions depending on what the county does so that it doesn't stop. I think if you stop it, you break it. And so we need to continue to move, even if the hauler picks it up as recycling in the recycling bin and has to commingle it until we get a process. I don't know what the answer is, but we can't break that habit. People are too used to that piece, and I think we need to continue that. There was an awful lot of really good effort, and I think Lyon County was one of the state leaders 30 years ago, and I think it would be an absolute travesty if we move backwards on that.
The other comment I'd make is that, the city doesn't have expertise on
Right.
dealing with the marketing and collection and marketing of recyclables. We do have businesses that are in that business. We have two of them represented here in the audience this evening. So I think part of that communication would be getting input from those professionals that are in that industry. If the county isn't going to.
Along those lines, is what's happening now kind of a down part of a cycle and it's going to change again, or is this permanently down as far as recycling is concerned? That's a big question.
I believe recyclable materials is a commodity, aren't they, Dan? Recyclable materials is a commodity that just fluctuates, correct? But it goes, it's a commodity that goes up and down just like any commodity.
So it can turn around then.
Okay, everybody comfortable with that direction and discussion? Okay. With that, then we'll move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 15, which is consider the approval of the 2019-2020 League of Minnesota Insurance Trust Property Casualty and Liability Insurance. So with us tonight, representing our agent of record, which is Bremer Insurance, is Jeff Noose. So, Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you guys want, you can pull out, you should have all of this in front, summary from insurance reporting the last 4 years there. So again, the insurance is with the League of Minnesota here, and it's been that way consistently. When we look at the top, going across the top there, beginning with the property there, we see the property coverage being $166,751 compared to last year, so that is up a little bit. The limits of insurance or the values are up as well, and the league did have to go through some rate changes that caused a 2% increase statewide. The reason for that was just changes with weather patterns, as we have all seen over the recent years. They have not had any changes or rate changes, so they did take that 2% increase. Right below that shows the limits. When you look at year-over-year comparison, the building valves evaluations are up about $13 million, which is also generating a little bit of that property increase as well. When we look at the mobile property, that's going to be the like the tractors, the loader, the Zamboni, some of those line items. It's consistent year over year, slightly higher from the previous year, but again, the evaluations are up a little bit there as well. Municipal liability, that one is down about 6%. Primarily decrease is to decrease in expenditures, which also results in decrease in exposure there as well. The autos, they had some changes with their auto liability system as well. Previous, they were at a 2-territory system, an urban rate and a rural rate. This would be like the ambulance, the fire trucks, police vehicles. So instead of being on the rural rate, they did combine the two, which did cause some rate increase there. And then they also removed the experience modification on the auto liability for this year only. They're working on separating out the municipal liability and the auto liability. So that is going to come back next year. However, that did affect it a little bit this year as well. So when we look at the auto rate year over year, is up about $3,000 there. Crime is included with the liability there. Liquor liability, that one is up slightly, primarily driven by sales receipts being up as well. Bond coverage is flat from year over year, and then the excess liability is down again due to a decrease in exposure. So overall package premium is up about 2% overall. Right below that, we have the airport liability. That one is consistent. That one does not renew until 2020, so there are no changes there. And then the equipment breakdown coverage through Hartford Steam Boiler is up about $5,000. Primarily reason is limits or values are up just over $1.5 million. And then they have also had a couple of claims in the last 2 years. So 2 years ago, a steam turbine, and then last year, compressor failure out at the Red Baron Arena as well. So reduction in the claims-free discount as well. So when we look at year-over-year package premium, like I said, is up a little bit there. Again, the limits of insurance is also up substantially year-over-year as well. Right below that just has a little bit more of a breakdown. That liquor liability, like I said, receipts were up about $351,000. Property coverage, the property values up about $13 million in limits of insurance. The municipal liability down due to the expenditures, the auto coverage, the combination of the urban and rural rates, as well as the elimination of the auto liability experience mod. Now next year, that will come back into play. So if it was in play this year, that experience mod would have been 0.84 compared to 1, which would mean basically credits as well. So a little bit of reduction in premium. So we'll see that come back next year as long as as long as the claims stay low as well. Airport coverage, again, doesn't renew until next year. And then the equipment breakdown coverage, a little bit of an increase, primarily due to the claims and the limits of insurance, and then that bond coverage being relatively flat year over year as well. One note as well, last year we did change the auto physical damage deductible to $1,000 instead of the $25,000 as well, so that did cause premium to go up a little bit last year. In review over the past year, there was one claim that was beneficial in that situation. Overall, it's tough to say after 1 year. Like I said, it's been relatively low from a claims frequency on the auto physical damage, so it's tough to note off that. Recommendation, visiting with the finance director, would be keeping everything consistent this year. Like I said, with some of those changes, we did look at some other options. However, the league is still substantially the best option as well for insurance. So, questions?
Thank you, Jeff. Questions?
The only question I have, and you can help clarify this, is from
Yeah.
2017 to 2019, our auto rates jumped 50%, 24,000 to 36,000.
Yep.
Is that because we lowered our premium, you said, from that 25 to 1,000?
Yeah, so the deductible, that caused about an $8,000 increase
So
there.
in 3 years, they basically make that up unless we have significant accidents.
Yep. And in more years, like I said, this last year was a low frequency. In previous years, when we reviewed those, there would have been more claims that would have been beneficial. Again, it just depends on keeping the claims frequency low as well.
Or zero.
Or zero, exactly.
John?
Just looking at it, I think if I remember right, when you say boiler coverage, that's a little bit of a misnomer.
Yep.
It covers other stuff.
Yeah.
But is steam boilers a significant part of that? And my reason for the question is, if, assuming we go through with the remodeling of the city hall, which has got a steam boiler in there,
Yep.
if that would change, would that have an effect on the insurance?
So a lot of it, what they look at primarily is based off of what the valuations, what's the limits of insurance, and what those coverages are. So depending on that situation, if there's changes or updates and everything, if those limits go up, that could cause the premium to go up there a little bit as well, because there's a higher insurance dollar amount. One thing I'm working with Hartford Steam Boiler as well is, and working with the finance director, is how do we keep the claims frequency down? It hasn't been an issue. It just happens to be a couple years in a row that there's been claims. So it's working with them, and a lot of times, if the city's willing to work with them as well, they can limit those increases or possibly provide additional credits if they see that there's not a whole lot of risk as well with the account. So
More inclined if there was an elimination of a boiler, would that have?
if there's elimination, then limits would decrease. So yeah, then it would decrease the premium there as well.
This also includes other things that aren't boilers, like lift
Exactly.
stations.
Lift stations as well.
I'd say
Yep.
it's
Yep.
quite a misnomer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
The biggest part of that $26,700 was the compressor at the hockey arena, correct? The ammonia compressor?
That was the steam turbine. The compressor failure at the hockey arena was about a $4,000 claim.
The question I have, and I just want clarification, when you talked about the urban and the rural area.
Yeah.
You said something about included ambulance.
So.
We don't have any ambulance.
Well, vehicle classes, so they have a list of parks and public works, so heavy vehicles, passenger vehicles, transit vehicles, so they have a breakdown of a list of vehicles. So for example, let's say police vehicles, for example, the old rating system through a rural rate was $383 for a police vehicle. Now with the new scheduled rate would be $519 per police vehicle. So that's where they, from their standpoint, from a simplicity standpoint, they combined the two rating systems or two territories into one. So.
Other questions for Jeff?
One last question, and I know I play this game with my construction company, but the compressor at Red Baron Arena,
Yep.
is that something like if they visit with you, is it worth turning in to keep your ratings? Because sometimes that affects your insurance, where you pay it back in less than a year.
Yeah. sometimes on the frequency standpoint, a lot of it depends on the size of the claim or the amount of claim. But insurance is to help protect you from the large issues. The small
Larger,
stuff is.
Not necessarily the small ones.
Exactly. Yep.
So, and that's what I'm asking, is it like a 4,000, when staff has this happen, I'm assuming that you sit and visit with
Yeah.
insurance agent, how is this going to affect our,
And sometimes it's tough to tell up front, if something goes out and it's urgent, it's tough to say how large this claim might be until you dig into the situation. But in some situations, yeah, you can go and get a quote or a bid out and figure out, okay, what's it going to cost to repair this? It kind of depends on the situation. There's a lot of gray area, but I understand what you're saying.
Because I do that with my construction company.
Yep.
Rip a door off a forklift.
Oh,
and
yeah.
fix it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not, thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Russ, seconded by Jim to accept the recommendation for the insurance renewal. Discussion on that motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting, and that motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 16, consider the banking service agreement with Bremer Bank. Annette and Carla will be presenting this.
Mayor and Council, tonight I'm going to give you a little background process and some supporting information that we've come up with in this endeavor. The Office of the State Auditor's Statement of Position, Deposit of Public Funds states, as part of the stewardship of public funds, we recommend that government entities periodically re-examine and reevaluate the banks and credit unions into which they place funds. By leaving money in the same depository year after year and failing to designate a depository on a periodic basis, public entities may lose out on the competition many depositories are willing to undertake for the opportunity to receive public funds. They also neglect their duty to periodically evaluate the soundness of their selected financial institutions. So in this process, staff reached out to 2 banks to compare fees and services to the current financial institution. The verbal request for rates comparable services from multiple banks was done in February, with the request to have proposals presented to the city. So the city received 1 proposal in March from Bremer Bank. This past April, a review with our current depository bank was done to ensure we were receiving the best rates that were offered. Staff reviewed and compared those fees and services. One of the services, the Virtual Vault, is an additional service that the city is looking at adding to our current banking services. The Virtual Vault is a physical safe that will be installed at a physical location and will be serviced by a third-party armory service. This would add an additional level of control, reduce risk, and create efficiencies and safety for staff. A few of these are: the deposit information is transmitted and credited to our account daily. It eliminates large bank deposits, deters theft, reduces employee access to cash, and guarantees secure cash transport. Staff are recommending that the council approve the agreement presented from Bremer Bank. This recommendation is based on the fees and services in the best interest of the city. The interest earnings and rates offered by Bremer are overall a better option and would add the additional service with the Virtual Vault. Bremer has a large presence in our local community, strives to give back through grants from the Bremer Auto Foundation. Moving our main depository to Bremer is expected to take 3 to 4 months. During this transition period, all fees will be waived by Bremer. Our investment policy states annual designation of our main depository, and investments will be updated in January of 2020 to reflect this change. Provided in your packet is the Bremer Bank Commitment Agreement, Interest Earnings Exhibit A, and a service line per item pricing detail Exhibit B. This pricing will be guaranteed for 5 years. Should the council approve the agreement, this recommendation has the full support of the Ways and Means Committee, as previously discussed in their meeting. I look to the council for consideration, approval of this agreement, and any questions.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. We'll open up for questions. First off, not a question, but thank you for the amount of work and research and due diligence that staff has put in this recommendation. It's very thorough, so thank you. John?
I'd just like to say that this was reviewed at the Ways and Means Committee meeting, and do have support from all three members of the Ways and Means in that. The other two of you can speak up as you want, but to me, the virtual vault is a very significant item and very much a safety issue. And I think that's a very good addition to have for the city to have that capability. This does not mean we're pulling everything out of Wells Fargo or where we're at now.
Correct.
There's still very sizable investments there, and they will remain there. This is simply our operating, basically our checking account.
Correct.
And the advice of the state auditor, it's probably good to get consistent look at that and monitor that and make some changes periodically.
Any other input or questions?
Mr. Mayor, just a question. And Carla, you said this was going to be a 5-year agreement?
This is a 5-year agreement with Bremer for
So-
the rates.
So on the document that we have, there are no dates as far as the agreement. It just says effective the fees and general banking agreement through December 31st. At least if there is, I missed it.
Believe.
'Cause I
On
know-
the,
I know on the back page where it's signed, there is the date of,
In
it starts in 2020, I believe, is
Yep.
January.
Oh,
Yep,
5-year
beginning
period,
January
beginning January
1st.
2020. Okay,
Yes, yep.
missed it. Thank you.
And if you look on page 204, what's listed as 204 at the bottom in the Bremer heading, then it says through December 31st, and then the 5-year period.
Okay, thank you.
Just two things. As far as this general banking agreement, what it is locking in the fees and so forth for that period, whatever the period is, the 5-year period. So we're guaranteed the rate. So it helps us, it benefits us. And is it possible, if things change, that we could change depository within that 5-year period? I mean, they're basically agreeing to set these agreements. I don't know if in the wording it says that we're obligated to
The
keep
state
them.
statute says that we have to delegate or designate a
Right.
depository
Right.
annually. So we have to designate them annually by
Right,
state
but
statute.
we do that annually.
Yep.
We will do that annually, and we could
Correct.
possibly change our mind if things changed. So it's to our benefit, the agreement, not so much to their benefit, I would think.
Correct.
Yeah. And the other thing I was wondering if you could kind of explain why you only contacted certain banks and not every bank in the city.
So the banks have to be large enough to take on governmental services, and all of our banks in the city of Marshall don't qualify for that. They're not large enough, so we contacted the larger banks that would actually be able to take on government.
And I wanted you to answer that because people might have a question why all the banks weren't contacted, so.
Right.
Thank you.
And a lot of the times, they have their own, they have a separate department that specializes in municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or input? Now, once again, thank you. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Russ. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting, and the motion passes. We'll move then to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 17. Consider the resolution that would approve the fee schedule for this coming year. Once again, Carla.
So before you have the resolution that we bring annually, the fee schedule. It has some changes in it, reducing fees to zero, removing some of those from the schedule. Others are incremental amounts. The wastewater, I want to note that it is a 0% increase that the staff are recommending for 2020. and that is different than what's discussed in Ways and Means initially, so I wanted to point that out. Surface water rate, 3% to sustain future projects. Also, there isn't been a change since the packet has been sent out, and that is to our wastewater porta potty waste charge. It is actually $74.12 currently in 2019, and that would also remain at a 0% or unchanged in 2020. I would entertain questions.
Carla, questions? John?
Yeah, and this was brought to Ways and Means, and Ways and Means did ask for, originally it was a 1% on the wastewater, and we'd asked for both to be brought to the council, but apparently looking at it and discussions we did have, the 0 was a recommendation, so that's good. The other item I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to is kind of a carrot and stick approach, you might say. With the dog license, actually dog or cat license, both of those were dropped to 0. So we are basically asking people to come in and get their dog or cat registered and get licensed with the city. It will not cost them. They will get a ticket. And the stick end of it is if your dog is or cat is loose and gets picked up and it does not have a license, it's $90 for the dog or for the animal at large and another $90 for no city license. So it's a pretty healthy stick on the end, but a carrot on the other side that says, you know, no charge bringing it in, but let's get your animals registered and know where they're at, know who they belong to. So we do know what's going on. Just wanted to point that out. That was another topic of discussion that we had in our Ways and Means, along with all the other fees and changes. So.
Glenn, you have?
Just one thing under the special assessment for street reconstruction section, I would like to relocate the comment on the second line down from that, where it says the assessment is lesser of the actual cost amount or maximum assessable amount. I'd like to move that statement up right under the special assessment heading. And the reason for that is because it does apply to both residential and commercial industrial street reconstruction. So
Carla, you're good with that?
statement, I'd like to have it moved to the beginning of the section.
Okay. You're good with that, Carla?
Yes.
I just have a question about that. Are we assuming that the special assessment amount calculation procedures is now going to be a part of the fee schedule, or is it separate, and is that something we should deal with separately some other time? Is that something we wanted included? Because it was my understanding we were improving the fee schedule by itself, and I just didn't know if that's now considered part of the fee schedule or it's a separate item. How does staff view it?
Carla, I guess I don't, and Glenn, I don't see a problem with including the calculation in the fee schedule. That's what you're asking, right, Councilmember?
Right.
Right, we can certainly include it, continue to include it in the fee schedule. This fee schedule is a working or a flowing document, so it will also change as your special assessment policy changes, so we'll make those necessary changes as they come.
I'm just asking for a clarification. I wasn't aware that it was part of the fee schedule, and are we going to consider it part now, or is it going to stay the way it was?
I think we should include the calculation in the fee schedule.
Yeah, the special assessment, that's always been part of, it has been for a couple of years now, the part of the fee schedule. The calculations were added through amendments this year in 2019. So I would recommend that they stay there. It gives constituents multiple places to find them, and it all directs back to one
I
place.
can get through that language too, Carla.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I was just, because on keeping with that special assessments, you said C calculation procedure. Should we incorporate the procedures right here so you don't have to go to two different places? I think that's what you're getting at. Let's incorporate the procedures right here.
And we can certainly do that as an appendix even.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I want to thank the staff again for continually looking at this document, and I ask that they continue to do that in the future throughout the upcoming months and years, because there are certain things that I think that we're not recouping our expenses in certain areas. And I'm not saying we have to make money, but if we're incurring some expensive with labor or materials, whether it be a skid loader rental or something else, I think staff needs to continually monitor that. Wages go up 3.5% every year, or whatever the case would be, if they have step increases. If it takes longer, I think I encourage staff just to continue to look at fees, just to try and break even at least, so we're not losing money. Thank you.
And maybe you've had this discussion of Ways and Means, but I like on the telecommunications, we always get hit hard on underground installation, on our $1 per foot per year. People always contest that, and I like this where you've got a permit fee and you've got a $2 upfront charge, and that's it. I think that's much more supportable than that annual. So
We discussed that, yes.
Mr. Mayor? And along with that, on the Councilman Labatt's comments about keeping up on this, because, a lot of what we do here, a lot of these are enterprise funds, and it is fee for service. And I know that, like with our MS4 stormwater program, staff are really good about working with the contractors and making sure that we meet the intent of it. And so I know that there's times that we do some cleanup for projects and other sites, and I think that's a really good community piece, but we can't do that at a loss, because it's also competitive service, that could be provided also privately, and I think it works well the way it is, and I appreciate the fact that those fees are representative of what it costs us to provide that service. So I think that's really good, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this.
I think one other thing to add too is appreciate that quite often there's comparisons made between what we have and other cities. And that's some additional work by the staff. So I'd like to thank the staff for that. And with that, I'd like to move the resolution.
Motion by John, is there a second? Seconded by Steve. Discussion? There's no discussion. We'll move to a vote. Close the voting. Motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 18, which is the South High, South Whitney Street Alley Improvement Project. The action would be the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering the preparation of the proposed assessment, as well as the resolution on the hearing, setting the hearing on the proposed assessment.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This one is a result of your previous action tonight to approve the project. We have very few line items in the bids, so we were able to identify the project cost to the property owners up front, and we went over those proposed assessments last night and received no adverse feedback to the numbers we were proposing, except for the service line items themselves. They're individually the responsibility of the certain property owners that get one. They're in the review process, and if they have one installed, they're responsible for it. They know it. Their assessment would be reflective of that service line. If they decide not to take one, it comes out before the assessment roll is certified. So they're all notified of that contingency, and this item and your next item for certifying that to set the hearing date has them all set at this time.
Okay, question for Glenn?
So Glenn, as I read this, all the assessments are the same at 1735.46.
Per unit.
Per house,
Yep, per house,
except for the two that opted to have
except for the
more.
3 on the north end that drain the other direction.
And then there's 2 people that must have opted for other,
Yep.
because there's an $8,000 and $4,000 assessment.
Yeah, and that's because of their service
Service
lines.
lines, yep. Okay, so
Yep.
sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Now, is there a motion on the resolution?
So move.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. So we'll move then to agenda item number 19. This is the action to call for the public hearing, the resolution, and have the hearing on the proposed assessment October 8th. Glenn, anything to add?
No, it's an extra week because of the required publications, so that's why it's not 2 weeks from now.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting, and the motion passes. Agenda item number 20 is the Huron Road, Superior Road Reconstruction Project. The action before us would be to consider the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering the preparation of the proposed assessment roll. Glenn,
Nothing further to add.
questions? Is there a motion?
Just a question,
Oh,
Mr. Mayor.
question. Russ?
We had one change order, Glenn, just curious what the change order was and how much it was?
It would be in the final estimate, so I'm not sure what that is at this time. Jason, do you know?
Okay. So we don't know what it was for and what the amount was?
Not without looking at the document itself.
Other questions? If not, is there a motion on the resolution?
So move.
Motion by John, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting, and the motion passes. Agenda item number 21 is the Huron Road, Superior Road Reconstruction Project. Again, we have the resolution for the hearing, setting the hearing on the proposed assessment that would be held October 8th. Is there a motion?
So move.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 22 is the authorization for the bike trail repairs between Highway 59 North and 7th Street. Preston Stengerud is here to address this. This is the part that was destroyed in this spring's flooding along the diversion channel, correct?
Yep. Thanks, Mayor and Council. That is correct. Actually, we were going to try and overlay this trail last fall, and then we kind of ran out of time. And with spring turning out the way it did, probably worked in our favor. But what we'd like to do now is the low-lying area where the water sits. We'd like to remove the asphalt that's there and destroyed essentially and replace it with concrete. It's about 434 linear feet of concrete, and then from there, east and west to each respective road would be asphalt, about 1,125 linear feet of asphalt. Hiskins was the low quote for concrete at $14,985 or $3.65 a square foot. And then Dunick was the low price for asphalt at $150 a ton, and we're estimating 110 tons to do the job, give or take. So we'd like authorization to proceed, and we think the cement will last longer in the event we have to clean it out again. So there's some wings down by the drainage where it goes under that are tar now, and they're sinking into the cement, so that's included in the concrete also. I think it's like 200 square feet of some shaping there, so.
Preston, just a question. On Dunnick's bid, you have 181 ton.
Yep, that's, Glenn asked me the same question. That's their price from last year when we were going to do all tar. But he said they'd honor their price per ton, but it won't be that amount. It'll just be.
Only 100.
Yep, I just put that in there showing the $150 per ton. And then
Thank you.
they'd still have the $800 mobilization fee, so.
Just from a number of constituents in the area and people that I know that typically use that path, they're really looking forward to that being fixed.
Yeah, we get asked quite often, and
So
just
do I.
been waiting for the, and now of course we're in the wet pattern again, but for a while there's really nothing you could do, so.
Any other questions?
The only question I have, and this looks good, but if we happen to get a really wet pattern, will they honor these bids in the spring? Hopefully, we don't have to wait that long, but they're talking a lot of rain.
Yeah, I can ask them, just see what they say. Like Dunnick's honored their price from last fall, but I suppose it just depends what prices
End up
do.
in the
to-
rainy season again,
Yeah.
because
Yep. So we get in, do the concrete work, and then work our way out, so.
2 miles.
The staff would also do the removal of that 430 feet of tar and any gravel placement that's needed, so.
Yeah, you know, one of the issues, and I think everyone knows this, is that it's not only the washing away that, but it's also the debris and mud and trees and everything that were there that had to be removed. And there is a portion that's concrete and that held up underneath the equipment, but certainly the asphalt was soft. And
Yeah.
that's what
It's not a good way to get down there, you know, like staying on, you can stay on the grass for a while until the slope gets so much that there's just nothing you can do.
difficult
Yeah.
spot.
Well, I think anywhere there's a lot of moisture, concrete's better than asphalt. It's hold up much better.
Yep, that's our plan. Originally, we talked about concreting all the way out, but this can be a,
Good compromise.
yep, yep,
So this basically matches the high water mark.
yeah.
The current.
What we think is the high water.
Yeah, we'll go with the permanent high water mark.
Yeah.
Current.
Just one quick question here. You're estimating the number of tons, and it's possible it could be more, a little bit more, a little less. This is kind of an estimate. It may
Yeah.
not be exactly.
It might
the
not be
amount.
exact, so we're not saying like not to exceed that because we might use more. We could possibly use less, but we do have 100,000 in the budget for bike trail repairs. So we do this out of that before we go to the next project, so.
And you might want to mention, there's the expectation that there's a possibility of reimbursement from the
Yep,
FEMA.
we'll include that, and whether we get it or we don't, I don't know, but the trail needs to be repaired from what it is today, either way, so.
Very good.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. That motion passes. Agenda item number 23, consider the resolution designating uniform election dates, polling locations, and authorizing the appointment of election judges. Kyle Box, our city clerk, is also the city's election official.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Normally this would be in a consent agenda item, but there's something that's different this year with the resolution. We are considering moving a polling location, Ward 1, from, which is currently at the RA facility at SMSU, to the Red Baron Arena. The reason this came up this year is we have a presidential nomination primary in March, which also happens to be the Minnesota High School section basketball tournament, which is hosted at SMSU. Obviously, we want that tournament in Marshall, so we're willing to look at other options. And the Red Baron Arena, which was not an option the last time we moved polling locations, is an option now. And myself, community service staff, and then 2 election judges of mine, also retired city employees, Tom Mellabrook and Jane DeVries, went and toured the Red Baron Arena, and we all concurred that that's going to be a good fit, and it would be a good location to host the new Ward 1 polling location. So there's a little movement that we need to do on our end. We need to notify Lyon County of our official change, which in turn notifies the Secretary of State's office, and then every registered voter in Ward 1, or one household with 1 registered voter in Ward 1 would get a notification, a mailing, notifying them of the change. So there's a little education that goes in with it too, to make sure this is a smooth transition to make sure people are aware of the change, the move, so.
When do you send the educational letter out to them?
It will happen, our deadline was originally the last meeting in November, just to start mobilization, so we can start anytime by statute, but I think we will continue to do that on our own to continue to educate and to notify voters of the change. But our deadline statutorily is December 1, but we'll start that process much earlier than that.
The actual polling location within the Red Baron Arena, will this be a location that doesn't require someone using any steps?
We're thinking we're going to list it as the Red Baron itself and not a particular room, but our initial thought is the vast club room on the 2nd floor. and the lobby, just because that offers the largest area, and we don't have to worry about there being ice on or ice off. It'd be great to host it on the floor, but usually there's going to be
No,
ice
I
on
was
in
thinking
November,
The
so.
lobby area or whatever, or you got elevator access to
Correct,
the
yeah.
club room, so.
Yep, and that'll, like I said, we toured that with a couple of election judges, and that was a nice area for us to use.
I have one concern with this area, and it's transportation. Is you virtually need a car to get here. So are we going to eliminate the opportunity for people to vote because now they can't get across the highway to this arena?
Why can't they get across there?
They can't walk across the highway. As we move it farther out of town, we're making it harder for our citizens who may not have cars to get to the polling place. We should try to move it in, make it easier for them. Your election's in November, it could be cold, it could be snowy. You created a hardship for some folks to get out here to vote because we're across a major highway and they can't walk.
That was a major concern of mine as well. It looks like we're moving towards the edge of town, which that is the edge of our city limits. It's not that much further than what the Red Baron is, but I see what you mean. We pulled out the election, the ward map, the city map, and we tried to identify in town a space large enough that's not currently being used for elections, and it was very difficult to do so. We currently use the Marshall Middle School, which we're hosted in tonight, and then the YMCA. Other options that we thought of that would be big enough locations just weren't practical. The Red Baron made the most sense to us. And for not being able, with the time constraint of not being to use the SMSU facility, kind of forced our hand, and I guess this is a better alternative, we think. SMSU did offer another location within their facility, but we're not going to be switching back and forth. This one, so every time we switch, we need to send notification, and I don't think that's our best play. I think we set a permanent location. I think the Red Baron is the recommendation.
So then my question would be is, do we set up a point for people to go to that they can be bused out there?
Something that we can look into.
Again, we want to make voting as easy as possible, not make it more
Absolutely.
complicated.
Yep.
I think that'd be an easy conversation to have with community transit who has multiple pickup points.
Yep.
And that'd
So
be a good solution.
yeah.
I think that's a
I
solution
think that
we
would,
should look at.
I'd say that,
We should address before the election, yes.
be glad to take that on to talk with community transit on that.
Okay.
So.
Great.
Very good. Any other questions for Kyle? If not, I'd entertain a motion on the resolution.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 24. Consider the amendments to the special assessment deferral. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This amendment to the ordinance is simply bringing our ordinance into compliance with state statute by allowing military persons that are currently actively deployed to qualify for a deferral of assessment. The second amendment is changing the net income to household income to better clarify the requirements. This amendment was brought to the July 22nd L&O meeting, and it was approved for council. Any questions?
Are there any questions on this? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Russ, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting, and the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 25, consider the ordinance establishing the fees for emergency fire protection fire services. Sharon, are you going to introduce this, and then Quentin?
I think Quentin can handle the
Okay, thank you.
presentation.
Quentin Brunsvold, Fire Chief.
The proposed ordinance in front of you, or that was in your packets, it just basically establishes an avenue for the city to collect on fire service fees that were generated due to a call for service. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Quentin?
Just a question, and I'll be abstaining, but I have a question. Quentin, it says ordinance have been adopted by several various size other cities of Minnesota. Is it possible to get a list for those someday? I mean, just curious.
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Quentin? If not, is there a motion? So moved. Motion by John, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If there isn't any discussion, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And motion passes. We'll note that one abstention. Agenda item number 26, consider the ordinance allowing beverages in city-owned facilities and parks. Kyle?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This ordinance was brought to the Legislative and Ordinance Committee, reviewed, I believe, over the span of 2 meetings, just to make sure that we really want to get this right, this ordinance right. So what this ordinance is proposing is already allowed in state statute, but it's going to put it in allows the city to put it in policy and how we want to be able to control this statute. So what this is, well, how it sounds, allowing alcohol in city-owned facilities and parks, which kind of derives from state statute 340A 404 subdivision 4, which is our special provisions, sports and conventions or cultural facilities. I can answer any questions that you have. Can be a complicated ordinance, but we tried to make it as easy reading as possible, so.
Thank you, Kyle. Questions? Russ?
Kyle, just a question on subdivision 2. It says security requirements provide private events of fewer than 500 persons shall be determined by the Community Services Department according to the policies and procedures. Should community services be working with public safety? What if they have 490?
That would be a question for the community service director, I suppose.
I'm not saying anything against community services, but if you have an excess of 400 people, there could be a potential for something that you would want director of public safety or else public safety to be out there, something. I don't know if you want to address that or not, or.
Well, you could just add consultation with public safety.
And that's what I would probably do, is just add in consultation with director of public safety. I mean, Scott would probably be more than happy to make that decision, but you're putting him out on a limb,
Right.
I think, a little bit there, the community services.
And my thought for those types, that large of a number, it was those large weddings at the Red Baron Arena.
Correct, yeah.
Where generally those, I would say those are under control, but I would agree, that language can be added easily.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If there's no discussion, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Agenda item number 27 is the call. Oh, Craig, are you going to vote or not?
Yeah, I voted yes. It said it was accepted, but I think I got in there just a little bit late. It was a photo finish and I lost.
Yeah. So you can record that?
Yep. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Craig. Agenda item number 26, agenda item number 27 is calling for a public hearing on the proposed property tax abatement at 301 London Road. Questions on this? Is there a motion to call for the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Jim.
No.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Ross. I get you guys mixed up all the time.
I'm going to need to go for a makeover.
Discussion on the motion.
Very understandable.
If there's no discussion, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll note the abstention. Agenda item number 28, similar, call for a public hearing regarding the proposed property tax abatement at 303 London Road. I would entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Russ. Discussion. We'll move to a vote. close the voting. And the motion passes. Once again, note the abstention. That brings us then to Commission Board Liaison reports. From my standpoint, the Southwest Regional Development Commission will meet this coming Thursday of this week, and the Fire Relief Association has not met since we last met. Greg?
Mine have not met, Mr. Mayor.
Steve?
Likewise.
And Glenn?
The Public Housing Commission met yesterday and approved a 3-year sanitation bid and a 1-year snow removal bid, and then approved a resolution regarding our 5-year and annual plan. That's it. Thank you.
John?
EDA did not meet. Utilities met last time, same time as our city council meeting, so not able to attend. We did have a Ways and Means Committee meeting since then, which we took action on. That's it.
Russ?
Library Board met last night. I was unable to attend. I reported last meeting that Plum Creek had hired a new director. I believe that has fallen through. So I didn't attend, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there. So CVB meeting, Lauren Deitz has completed her 1-year anniversary with CVB, and we all applauded her tenacity and her patience and everything working with CVB this past year, because it has not been easy for her. They hired a new marketing and events coordinator, Julia Stuckey, who was the summer intern there, so she will start. Ron will leave in sometime in October. City branding update, they hope sometime in mid-December to release it. So that's all I have.
Adult Community Center meets tomorrow, otherwise the other ones have not.
Thank you. We'll move then to staff reports. Sure. Or no council member individual items. Greg, let's start with you.
Thank you. 2 things, Mr. Mayor and Council. I don't know if anybody noticed last weekend, there was a volleyball tournament at the Red Baron Arena and Expo, and it was awesome. And it's not just a hockey place, so I don't know if you've gone online and seen the pictures, but it was very impressive. And it was a hardship for one facility, it was a windfall for our facility, and my hats off to the staff and everybody that worked on that. It looked awesome. I guess it was awesome. There was a ton of very positive feedback. Multiple states attended. Pretty cool to see it happen. That was great. And then the second thing that I have is just for everyone, tomorrow's the anniversary of 9/11, and there's always a nice short celebration, or not celebration, but an honoring at Memorial Park at noon. So if you're not busy, bring your umbrella and come down and for a really good short service at the park. That's all I have.
Thank you, Greg. Steve?
Nothing to report other than at our next meeting, I will have to be at a meeting in Seattle, Washington for efficiency in clinics. So I will be learning how to make our business a little more efficient. So I will not be there.
I have nothing.
Jim?
I have a couple of things. Glad you stuck around, Jason. I know last week Unique Opportunities got their building open, and I want to commend their building department. You know, you always hear how they're not out there to help citizens. They are. I think your department went above and beyond to get them the certificate of occupancy so they could open up and not lose any revenue, and I want to commend your department for doing that. So I'm going to give you kudos when you do well, too. You did very good. The other thing, my children brought this up after our last meeting. They actually do watch us on YouTube. But they said, why are we putting our electric car charger at a liquor store? They said, you know, my children are into this. They said, why won't you guys put it downtown Marshall where they can plug their car in and visit your downtown that you own?
City-owned property. City-owned
Has to be
property.
city-owned property.
We own a parking lot behind City Hall.
You ever try to park in there? I mean, that's all we need is
I
to
did. I
lose
parked
those
in there all
spots.
winter. And I think they made a good point. They said, why are you putting a charging station at a liquor store?
Promoting
It does.
business.
Huh?
Promotes business.
So I think as we look at this, and I know I mentioned this to Sharon, that we should maybe look at that, because as people come to Marshall, they got to charge their car. We want to pull them into town, not park them in front of, and nothing against Menards and Walmart and our liquor store, but they're not seeing Marshall, then they're seeing a liquor store.
Yeah, I think, you know, good point, Jim. I think there's a couple of things, and I think in the future, as, you know, we're looking at the renovation of some of the parking lots, especially the one closest to Highway 19, there'll be the opportunity. You know, these were the ones that are the first that are provided by that Volkswagen settlement grant, but I'm sure there'll be more opportunities to.
Well, it just surprised me they actually watch us on YouTube. That was the first thing that surprised me.
You should look into the camera and say thank you, Joe.
I'm sure my son is watching. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. Sharon, do you have
I
anything?
just want to add, we do have a local businessman who has discussed with me the potential of having the charging station on his private parking lot that is downtown. I don't know where he's at with that, so one of the site location thought processes is we didn't want to compete with him, but, maybe he won't move forward with it, but that was part of some of the discussion on the location.
That's all.
Okay. Russ?
Nothing.
John?
Just the only comment was I did get to see the video on volleyball. That was very good. I also got to see the video on the Connect that put together, and that's some great work. So it's really nice to see. And the one on Marshall itself, Welcome to Marshall, or whatever the actual name of it was, great shots and some nice work on that. So
Very good. I'd also say it really showed the versatility of that space in the video. The time-lapse video was really impressive about how quickly it went on and off and how fast the people moved. And so I'd also, when Jim brought up the unique properties and opening, and Sharon and I were out in that area today, there is an issue with outside storage in the property immediately behind there, with a lot of stuff that is stored outside. And I'd anticipate that we will probably have some input from some of those residents. So we may want to do at least a little research about how is outside storage in that zoning on that property go. So we haven't had any complaints yet, but I'd anticipate, just from the appearance, that there will be a problem or some complaints. I'd also say yesterday we did attend the groundbreaking of at the Freightliner dealership on North Highway 59, a $3.5 million improvement. And of course, that is our first commercial tax abatement project in the city. And the owners of that, which are not from this area, and the CFO, which is also works in a number of other communities, commented numerous times how helpful the city staff and our EDA staff was in working with that project. They had nothing but good things to say, so that was really good to hear. With that, we'll move to staff reports. Sharon?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I did place a memo in the council packet regarding the 2020 levy and budget. It was originally scheduled, or I presented that the date we would adopt the preliminary levy would be September 10th. However, there's some uncertainty, potentially City Hall expenses. The other item potentially could be recycling. Do we need to maybe compensate something in our levy for recycling? And then in addition, this one maybe not be well known, but we did apply for a assistance firefighters grant last year under the direction of the fire chief, and we are still awaiting whether or not we will receive that grant. We think we have a good chance. There's been delays on exporting the FEMA grant awards. We've been told that they have to let us know by the end of September. Obviously, the next meeting is September 24th. Maybe we won't know at that point either. But that maybe we want to compensate something in our levy if we do not get those grants. And that would be for self-contained breathing apparatuses, and clearly a life and safety item. And we think it's worthy of the grant, and hopefully we get that. So those are some of the reasons for delay, and did discuss that with the mayor. Finally, we did have in the council packet some black and white renderings of City Hall today. Late in the afternoon, we did get color photos, and I think Kyle has those. And I just want to cover a few things on the rendering, because it has changed slightly. One of the things that's changed from the black and white rendering is a little darker color for the small awning, and that was to better mesh with downtown. The original look was more of a metro, kind of an urban look, and it could be looked both ways, whether it, someone said it may look like a grain building, one other person said it looks like another building in town. So this is a reflection of some architectural consultation. Obviously, they're the experts on kind of what would look good on a building. Obviously, as we get a little bit further down, there can be some slight variations to this. One of the things that to kind of keep in mind with the rendering is, we definitely want some feedback, but at the same time, if there would be major changes, we're a little concerned about adding to the cost. So some of the communication thus far has been, how much will this cost if we change this? And if there's a large cost impact, we've tried to change it slightly. Let me add too, Kyle, if you could throw it back to that frontage.
Before you leave that, what's the red pole?
That is a fire sprinkler connection port for the fire department. It's really distracting at this point. I think we talked about possibly kind of relocating that. It would.
I think it'd have to be yellow, though, wouldn't it? Shouldn't it be yellow?
I don't know what the code states for that.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, the fire chief likes that it's in front of the building. He hasn't actually seen this rendering, but I did actually talk to him this afternoon about this as well. But I do want to kind of point out there's a lot of brick on the frontage, and that is, if you look downtown, there's a lot of brick. The other thing that we talked about doing early on is give a nod to the 1914 building and the banding that you see, which is the lighter colored stone strips at the top and the middle and near the bottom. And then also the, which we didn't get in contact with the architects, we had to look this up, but there's also some stonework above the windows. They're called keystones, and that is actually very similar to what was on the 1914 building. And to the far right, there's some other stone on top. There was a large block stone on the 1914 building as well. So we did review a schedule with the architects, and we are looking at the final plans being presented on October 8th, and then we would be requesting from the council authorization to advertise for bids. And we would be looking at in November the opening of those bids, to meet the publication requirements. So a lot of city hall committee meetings prior to this, and then a lot of staff discussion. I know that the city hall committee did not meet a lot recently, and that's because once we kind of got enough direction from them, we really had to kind of sit down and talk to some experts on electrical, IT, security, things like that, we had to rely on others for that. I don't know if there's any input or if you want to share anything. I guess I'll be quiet at this point.
Input? Thank you, Sharon. Okay. Anything else, Sharon? Move then to Glenn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The only thing I wanted to bring up is the delay of street repairs doing the excessive rains over the weekend and the forecast of excessive rains the rest of the week. We want to make sure that everyone understands that we're kind of under a wet cycle, and if there are any problems in the streets, or to give us a call. We expect some localized flooding. That's all we have.
Dennis? I don't have anything else. Okay. Then we'll move on to our head We have the administrative brief for your information and the information items, including the building permits, the listing of upcoming meetings. Is there anything else to come forward this evening? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John to adjourn this meeting. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting, and we are adjourned.